of any creed or the practice of any form of worship, freedom of conscience and freedom to adhere to such religious organization or form of worship as the individual may choose cannot be restricted by law. On the other hand, it safeguards the free exercise of the chosen form of religion. Thus, the amendment embraces two concepts: freedom to believe and freedom to act. And here is the most important part of the decision. The first is absolute, but in the nature of things, the second cannot be. So, the freedom of conscience, or the freedom to believe, is absolute because nobody is supposed to determine what are your beliefs. And that's why we have to make the distinction between these three, I would say, branches, or these three distinctions of the religious freedom. Also, we have to say that the religious freedom, the freedom of religion, provides a freedom of liturgy. And that's natural, because as long as you have the basic right for worshiping, you must have also the fundamental right to liturgy. But this fundamental right for or of liturgy is not absolute. So, individual freedom to worship is guaranteed as long as it does not violate others' fundamental rights. And we brought some cases, either decided by the Supreme Court in Brazil or decided by the American Supreme Court, that will show you how freedom of religion and also freedom of liturgy is a very controversial issue here in Brazil and wherever this subject comes to be discussed. We also have to say that freedom of religion provides a basic guarantee to an individual to create religion. That's why we have been seeing so many religions being created in nowadays, here in the United States, in Brazil, and everywhere. When we analyze freedom of religion, we also analyze a very interesting issue, which is related to conscientious objection. The Brazilian Constitution of 1988 provides the conscientious objection in Article 5, Item 8. And it is stated like that: no one shall be deprived of any rights by reason of religious belief or philosophical or political conviction unless he or she invokes it to exempt himself from a legal obligation required of all and refuses to perform an alternative obligation established by law. So that's how the Brazilian Constitution provides the conscientious objections or the conscientious objection. And as long as we have in Brazil the military service, this conscientious objection might be opposed by the individual that doesn't want to go on military service. But we have to understand how it works. I may not invent any kind of conviction just to get rid of going to the military service. The conscientious objection must be something very sincere, and it must take a significant part of the believer's life. That's how the United States Supreme Court decided, and it was very important for me to notice and to get this decision, because this was and this has been a very controversial issue in Brazil. What kind of conviction might be argued by the believer in order not to go to the military service, which happens to be compulsory, which happens to be an obligation, a legal obligation in Brazil? So, in this case, United States versus Seeger, the American Supreme Court decided that persons who claim conscientious objection must have a sincere and meaningful belief which occupies in the life of its possessor place parallel to that filled by God. And also the United States Supreme Court reaffirmed Ballard, the case Ballard, and held that draft boards were not free to reject beliefs because they considered them incomprehensible. See, that's a very interesting issue. And as the United States now send troops to Iraq, an individual which comes to have a sincere conviction against the war is not obligated to go to war, as this decision of the United States Supreme Court in United States versus Seeger, a case which was a decision was delivered in 1965. Also, we have to analyze some controversial issues now related to freedom of liturgy. How about animal sacrifice and freedom of liturgy? Does the individual have the right for sacrificing animals in